94.3 The Dude is very grateful to our men and women in uniform. We're proud to recognize local members of our military by turning the spotlight on them right now in our Soldier Salute.
I'm your host, United States Marine Corps veteran Ethan Stitch Gardner, and on today's Soldier Salute, I have United States Army Sergeant First Class Brian Lewis. Sergeant, thanks so much for being here with me today. Thank you for your service, over 30 years of service to the United States Army. Tell the listeners a little bit about yourself and a little bit about that 30 years.
Sure, Ethan, it's great to be here with you. My name's Sergeant First Class Lewis. I first joined the Army back in June of 1990. I went to basic training at Fort Dix, New Jersey, and then after that I went to AIT at Fort Gordon, Georgia, advanced individual training. Shortly thereafter, I had orders to go to Germany. While I was in basic training, Saddam Hussein invaded Kuwait. You remember when I got to Germany, the first unit that I was assigned to, as soon as I got off the bus to my first unit, Bravo Company, 26th Single Battalion, I remember a Staff Sergeant Cole walking up to me, telling me that I needed to go call my mother because I was going to Saudi. So right away I was like, okay.
Very quick.
Yes. So literally I did that. Then I got another series of shots, vaccinations. In a couple weeks, I think maybe it was like 10 days I was in Germany, but they sent me on an advanced party. I ended up going to Bahrain. It was, I think it was in close proximity to Saudi Arabia initially. We didn't have any cots, didn't have any equipment. We were just sleeping on wooden pallets trying to keep off the sand, and then the Red Cross stepped in and provided cots, so we were thankful for that. I spent about 5.5 months in Saudi. One of the things, fondest memories about Saudi at the time was 19. Back then I wasn't a medic. I was actually a 31 kilo combat singleman. I remember going back to 7th Corps headquarters on the Friday night prior to the invasion starting on that Sunday. I'm trying to remember the dates. It's been a long time. I remember my section sergeant team leader actually met General Frederick Franks Jr. I didn't actually shake his hand. I remember kind of standoffish, sitting in the background, but I remember his white mustache.
Terrified private, general
Yes.
walking by.
Yes. But it was really, really cool. I was able to see all the maps of where our troops were, what we were going to do. But what our mission was to ensure that a battalion commander was able to stay in constant contact with his tanks as they pushed forward. I remember that Friday night and the Saturday and Sunday, the field artillery from our side was just hammering the Iraqi positions. We were right up on the berm. The engineers had breached the berm, and there was artillery positions on each side. And I think it was that Sunday morning that we went in. And I remember, as far as the eye could see, you could see just military trucks, logistics, just all types of different vehicles waiting to pour through the border. And because we were on this mission, we were able to cut in front of everyone and got to go to the front of the line. The tanks had already pushed through, but I remember it was such a rush. And its fondest memory I had, there was nothing like that rush as a young soldier going through the berm, and there was artillery pieces just popping away on each side as you went through the breach. We were with 7th Corps, and we crushed the Republican Guard. So anyway, that was my fondest memory as a young soldier. That kind of, my first time deployed, first war, so that I kind of have special Desert Shield, Desert Storm veteran. After that, we went back to Germany. From Germany, just got back in May of 1991. It was really, want to share a story, it was really, really cool. We left most of our equipment in Saudi. So after that, they were offering free passes to go to London, to go to Paris, to go wherever. So I went on a 4-day pass. I got to go to London, got to see the Crown Jewels, I got to see Buckingham Palace, Westminster Abbey Church, all types of cool stuff. And then shortly after that, they gave us another pass to go to Birch's Gardens, which we used to own. And we got to stay in these hotels, elaborate hotels that the Nazi generals had stayed in, I guess, during the Second World War or whatever. But I got to see Hitler's bunker, got to go into the salt mine. So anyway, really, really cool. I did everything I could to stay in Germany. Unfortunately, 7th Corps was deactivated because of the end of the Cold War and had orders to go back to the States. So cool thing about being in Germany was you got to drink. So I was like 19, 20 years old. So
When I was in the Pacific, the drinking age was 20, so I got to drink when I was in the Pacific.
Yeah, exactly.
It was a great time.
So that was really, really, really cool, being able to drink, as a young man, especially after being deployed and everything like that. So I got to go to Fort Benning, Georgia in October of 1991, and I was still 20. So then I turned 21 in February of 1992. So there's a little gap there where I wasn't able to drink. But anyway, I went to Fort Benning and I did 4 years, and then I ended up getting out in 1994. From there, I joined a reserve unit. I was in several reserve units. There's only been 2 years since 1990 that I wasn't in an active reserve unit or active duty. So I only had 2 years break in service since 1990. But I went to school, got an associate's in science from ITT. I then worked for IBM for about 4 or 5 years doing computer technical support.
What a rush.
Yes, it was. I did about 400 calls a week. Thank you for calling the IBM Help Center. This is Brian Lewis. May I please have your phone number beginning with the area code? So anyway, I did that for about, imagine doing that 400 times a week. And
in comparison to that breach through the Iraqi brigade, that's night and day.
Yes, totally different. So I decided to come back on active duty. When I came back on active duty, I retrained as a medic, Fort Sam Houston, and then I went to Korea for a year. After that, I was at Fort Polk for a few years. Then I came to Fort Jackson for a couple years. Then I volunteered to be on a MIT team in 2009. Went to Iraq for a year. A MIT team is a small team that's embedded with the Iraqi Border Patrol. So we were an 11-man team, and we were embedded in a compound with about, 150, 200 Iraqi Border Patrol. And literally, we lived with them for about a year. So I was the team medic, and I did sick call for the Iraqi Border Patrol, took care of them, ingrown toenails, all that stuff, whatever. So, but anyway, it was a great experience. Did that in 2009. Then I came back to Fort Jackson. From there, I went to Fort Knox, Kentucky. Then I was deployed with 3rd Brigade, 1st Infantry Division in 2013 to Afghanistan for about 9 months. 3rd Brigade, 1st Infantry was deactivated. As many of you know, the Army was going through a drawdown 4 or 5 years ago. Then I went out to Fort Irwin, California as an OC, Observer Controller. An Observer Controller, basically, my job was to mentor medical platoons that came out to the National Training Center. So I did that for a couple of years. And then I came back to Fort Jackson, South Carolina, where I'm a medical instructor, and I'm going to retire next summer.
Sergeant, you have a pretty incredible story. The passing of your father 5 years ago, something fell into your lap that you really weren't expecting. Tell listeners a little bit about that.
About 5 years ago, 1 September 2014, my father passed away. With that, I had the burden of taking over his business. The company was formerly called Classic Software, so I immediately opened up a new business in my name called Max Loan Servicing Software, LLC. And what the business does is a mortgage loan servicing software. I don't lend any money out, but small businesses and governments use the business to keep track of loans that they lend out. The system will keep track of principal, interest, escrow, investor pools, and at the end of the year generates 1098s. Copy A goes to the IRS, copy B and C. Copy B is for the person who borrowed the money, C is for the lender. So the system basically runs itself. There's a couple servers, people can access it 24 hours, 7 days a week. Very stable system, and I've just focused on primarily maintaining existing clients and have people who do contract work for the company. One of my biggest clients is actually Miami-Dade Public Housing and Community Development. They love the software. So anyway, that's a little thing I've been doing on the side, and real proud of my father's business. And basically, I just try to take the money and put it back into his business instead of into my pocket.
Sergeant, your father passed away 5 years ago. You picked up his business, continued on his legacy. That's got to be tough. What is it like running a business while on active duty in the United States Army?
Little tricky. Fortunately, the chain of command when my father died was very supportive and understanding the gravity of the situation, because it wasn't just about my father's business, but the businesses that survived off his business. So there's many small businesses and small governments that use his product, and if his business vanished, they would go out of business themselves because they didn't have the money to buy a $20,000, $30,000 mortgage loans, more advanced software that the big banks use. So basically my product does similar to what the big banks does, but at a much lower cost. One of the things I did is I reached out to some of my friends who were in the IT community, and they helped me find people that I could hire to do contract work for me to help run the business. So, and that's basically the strategy I've basically done, is delegated and contracted the work out out. So basically the business runs itself because the servers are in a data center and they can be accessed 24 hours, 7 days a week. And then I have other people that actually, if there's any customer support calls, they'll take those calls. Any technical IT issues, they take care of it. Basically, all I do is really the billing. I send out the invoices every month, and I do that on my own time. So, but what my strategy was, because I knew, look, I am a soldier. That is the priority that comes first. The strategy I've done is I have not tried to grow the business. I have not tried to advertise the business. All I've been doing is taking care of my father's existing clients. And part of that is in the 5 years that I've run his business since he passed away, I have not raised the prices on any of his existing clients. Thankful that they've stayed with me, and I'm, and they're thankful I'm still business. So it's kind of a mutual understanding. And if I do decide to grow the business down the road, all of those clients will be kind of grandfathered in, where they're just, what they're paying is what they're paying, and I'm not going to raise the prices on it.
Sergeant, you have a bachelor's degree in political science from the University of Maryland. Time on active duty is strenuous and tough enough. Running a business while on active duty, I'm sure, is even more complicated. But getting your bachelor's degree on top of all that has got to be a complicated process.
Yes, it is. Complicated enough that it took many, 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 many years to achieve that bachelor's degree. Part of what I did was I used the Army's TA tuition assistance program. Basically, you can take about 5 classes a year, up to about $4,500 a year of free tuition assistance. Now, the catch with that is if you withdraw from a class after the first week, or let's say you don't get a C or higher, then you actually have to pay the Army back that money. So that's a little tricky. You got to be real careful, and that's why you only want to take 1 class at a time, 2 classes at a time, no more than that, because if you try to do more than that, you're going to overwhelm yourself. But I originally got an associate's in science from ITT back in 1998. When I did my first 4 years, I'd used part of my GI Bill to achieve that. And then when I came back on active duty, started taking college classes again, and I ended up getting, before I got my bachelor's degree at University of Maryland, I got my associate's degree at University of Maryland. I was like, hey, I already have enough credits, might as well go ahead and apply for it. So I got my associate's degree from University of Maryland, and literally I just finished my bachelor's degree at University of Maryland in political science. It takes a lot of work. You have your family, got chores you got to do around the house, other stuff. So it takes time where you just have to be disciplined to set a couple hours aside every night, 1 to 2 hours every night, and just keep working on it, and have that time on Saturday afternoon or Sundays on the weekends that you're committed to doing it. And it's not easy, but I credit the college education that I did get at getting that associate's degree, getting more than 3 years of college initially helped me get promoted to sergeant first class. So if you don't have at least a 2-year degree, yes, you can. If you're a phenomenal PT stud or physical training, okay, and you're really good on your weapons qualification, yes, you can still get picked up into your senior ranks. But the problem is, we're in today's Army, whether it be the Army, Marines, Navy, Air Force, whatever, is education is a big factor, because you're competing amongst your peers. So if everyone else is taking college and you're choosing not to do it, then you're going to be the one that's separating yourself from your peers. So by completing your college, it's going to give you the edge. The other thing, too, I want to point out is when I first came in the Army in the early 1990s, I actually attended Columbus State University. Completely different back then. You had to go through your company commander, get him to sign off on his paperwork, and it was really difficult process to do. And the other problem is, if I was stationed at Fort Benning and then you went to another duty station, well, then you had to reapply to another university, and then you had to have all your credits transferred over, reapply, transfer credits, and then it took time for them. All right, this is where we're awarding you these credits for the degree you're going to pursue. So now the beauty, especially at University of Maryland that I just finished my degree with online, it doesn't matter. I mean, I started going to University of Maryland back in like 2013 while deployed in Afghanistan. I was taking classes. It doesn't matter. When I was at Fort Irwin, California as an OC, I had some downtime sitting on the, sitting in the Humvee, had a little downtime, grabbed my laptop, and I'm working on a paper when you have that. So that's the beauty, no matter where you are online. Doesn't matter where you are in the world, you can always access your classes. So bottom line is there's no excuse. And that's what I tell soldiers. There's no excuse. And leaders should be pushing their soldiers to get that education done. Because if not, it's just wasted money. You get free money, $4,500 from the Army every year. And the soldiers, they're not using all that money. Something's wrong. They should already have their degree. I encourage soldiers to get their degree because one day they're going to be out of the Army and they have to transition back out to the civilian world. And one last little tip. The other thing too, by doing the TA tuition assistance, what I had left on my GI Bill, I transfer that money over to my son. Most of my son's college is paid for because I used the TA tuition assistance while on active duty.
Sergeant, you got your own business, you got your bachelor's degree. There's a laundry list of amazing things that you continue to do. But what is this? You're applying for Teachers of Tomorrow. You want to be a teacher in the state of South Carolina. Tell us all about that.
I have an approved retirement, so I will be retiring in the summer of next year, 2020. So when I retire, one of the things I would like to do is to become a full-time teacher in the state of South Carolina or work for the JRTC program or the U.S. Army. So the Teachers of Tomorrow program was brought as a company that's out of the state of Texas. The South Carolina legislative approved Teachers of Tomorrow to come into South Carolina about 2 years ago. South Carolina has its own program, which is called PACE, which is an alternate teacher certification program, but they just weren't producing enough teachers. So South Carolina has a shortage of teachers. So the idea with the two different programs competing amongst themselves is to turn out more teachers to help fill that void. The way Teachers of Tomorrow program works is after you apply for the program, you have to already have your bachelor's degree, and my degree is in political science. So I'll start doing online training to become a teacher with the Teachers of Tomorrow program, and then whether before or after, you can take the state exam, which is the praxis exam. For me, that will be in social studies in the area that you want to teach. And once you've taken the praxis exam and gone through the Teachers of Tomorrow program, it takes about 2 to 3 months to go through the training. It just depends. It's at self-paced, at your own pace. Once you've achieved those two things, then you're eligible. You'll get a letter from the state. You're eligible then to apply to work as a full-time teacher in the state of South Carolina. Now, you're basically on a probation period. You're eligible to work, to start getting your benefits and all that, but you won't be able to work. You won't get your full license until 3 years later, and then you're only allowed to work during that probationary, I call it a probationary period. You're only allowed to work inside the state of South Carolina. Or if you were taking Teachers of Tomorrow in Alabama or Georgia, or wherever, you'll be working at state for the first 3 years. That's one of the things I'm looking forward to. At the same time, also looking at the U.S. Army JRTC program as well, because you just don't know what jobs are going to be available when I retire. Is there going to be a middle school or high school social studies teacher in Richland County or Lexington County? If not, then I might do the JRTC program. I'm kind of hopeful that they are, because I've already looked at the vacancies. So there is, like I said, there is a teacher shortage, but I'm looking forward to that. And my wife works for Richland County School District 2. Very jealous of her. Most of you know teachers, they work for 9 months, but they spread out their pay for 12. So yes, teachers put up with a lot, but the flip side is they got those summers off.
Have your subordinate members of your command prepared you well to deal with a room full of high school children?
Yes. And my wife as well. So my wife has warned me over and over that is different from being a Sergeant First Class in the United States Army. They're not soldiers. So I understand that. And it's just one of those things that you have to have the mindset. If you're going to teach, you got to give it all you can give. But if you're having problems, hey, then you got to contact the assistant principals or principals and not lose your cool. And remember that they're not soldiers. Same thing, you're going to treat all the students with respect, just like you treat soldiers with respect as well. But it's something I think I'll enjoy. And one of the things I mentioned earlier is that I'm a medic, I'm a medical instructor. So for years, I've instructed first aid classes, CLS classes, combat life-saving classes in U.S. Army. So I'm very comfortable teaching in groups of whether it be 50, 200 soldiers at a time. So with other medics as assistants. So very comfortable in that environment. So I kind of look at that as an analogy that's actually helped prepare me to teach.
Sergeant, with your retirement quickly approaching and with the permission of your command, you've actually started already going out into the public school systems and substitute teaching here in South Carolina.
Yes, that's a matter of fact. And again, I just want to stress I do have an approved retirement. I am going to retire soon, and with the approval of my chain of command, on days like this past Friday, I had off, and I substituted for one of the schools in Richland County, one of the middle schools. It was a very interesting experience. It was different. I enjoyed it, but again, if it's one of those things, a new experience, and I wanted to have that experience to know what I was getting into before I make the total commitment to become a full-time teacher. So I've been blessed that my chain of command was supportive in that, and so I'm just looking forward to continue to do that. And that'll actually, part of that is not only making sure that I want to make the full-time commitment to become a teacher, the Teacher of Tomorrow program, before I make that full commitment, but what it'll also do is give me some experience so that when I do retire and there's that teaching job that's open, then at least I have to say, hey, I have some experience substituting teaching besides having the qualifications to actually teach. So that's going to help me be competitive with other people who may be applying for the same job that may have that experience that I wouldn't have if my chain of command wasn't substituting. So I really, again, am blessed and thankful that my chain of command has been supporting to help me make that transition, become a civilian once I retire.
Sergeant, as a veteran who only served my 4 years, honorably left, something that I didn't harp a lot on, and my leadership didn't really harp on me a lot, was preparing for the future. What would you have to say to your soldiers on the importance of preparing for the future?
Preparing for the future, whether you do 4 years, whether you do 10 years in the Army, 20 years in the Army, at some point, myself, I'm going to end up with 22 years active duty, 28 with my reserve time. Bottom line is I'm going to be making that transition. So you have to have a plan. What are you going to do when you get out of, whether you be in the Army, Navy, Air Force, Marines, Air Force, etc. You got to have a plan. And part of that I highly recommend to soldiers is take full advantage of the educational benefits and try to get as much college done while you're on active duty. And that's going to tremendously less that you're going to have to do if you're not able to finish it all before you leave the service. At least maybe you've only been able to get 2 years done. Well, that's still 2 years less that you have to do. I just really want to stress on the need to, whether it be college or some type of vocational or technical training, you need to get some type of skill. But if you just simply do 4 years in the Army or Navy, Air Force, you do your time and you have no particular skill, it's going to be very, very difficult for you to make that transition to the civilian world. So that is the best advice that I could give to any soldier. The thing I want to also mention too is, like myself and Ethan, did 4 years, 1990-94, I got out, went to school, was in reserves, and then I came back on active duty. That's always an option as well. So don't burn your bridges, is my point, that whether you do 4 years and you're like, okay, hey, I'm ready to get out on good terms. Get out with that honorable discharge, get all your benefits. Don't burn that bridge. Okay, don't burn that bridge. Leave that door open. That's what you want to do. And there's nothing wrong. The other thing I'd also say, some soldiers, they do the 4 years active duty, get out, be a part of the reserves. I did that for many, many years. I love the reserves. It was great. I just had a desire that I wanted to come back on active duty after 2001 with all the the World Trade Centers and everything like that. I just had this burning desire. I wanted to come back on active duty. Whether you're on active duty or the reserves, they all are important to the overall functionality of our armed forces.
Thanks for joining us in our Soldier Salute, presented by Little Pigs Barbecue, serving Columbia since 1963 with that bodacious buffet. And Palmetto State Armory, American made for life. And Franklin Equipment, rent, buy, rely. And Atkins Law Firm Workers' Comp Attorneys, who you hire matters.